Welcome to the Wrestling Source, the exclusive YouTube show of WrestlingNewsSource.com. My name's David, and I'll be here each week as we take a closer look at the current events in the world of professional wrestling. This week, Old School's out. Did it make the grade? And will it mark the return of an old school brand to wrestling programming? And finally, a report on the Indies. Sort of. Let's get started. Well, the WWE ran their 3-hour Old School special this past Monday night, and from your comments here on the YouTube screen and from our other sources, the show did not disappoint. And didn't disappoint me either. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive from you folks who've left your comments here and with WrestlingNewsSource.com. Overall, very well done. It was good to see some of the superstars from the past, but the best part of it for me were those old school production values, like the old set. The use of the inset interviews before the matches with the superstars making their comments before the match started. A lot of nostalgia in that for me. Some of it was a little sad. Mean Gene shaking like a leaf trying to hold the microphone, but his mic work was still fantastic, and he still knows how to throw a good interview. It was good to see some superstars that I hadn't seen in a while on screen, like Tito Santana, like Arn Anderson, who admittedly we expected to see as he's a backstage worker for the WWE, but it's good to give those guys some airtime every now and again. And like I said last week, really get those old school performers who had to make it without the benefit of the internet wrestling community before the internet was big in wrestling. Expose them to the newer guys and the newer talent, and kind of give them tips on how it could be done when it wasn't so easy. And that wasn't any clearer for me than the final segment of the night, the Piper's Pit segment. I think you can afford me one moment of markishness here, and most of the folks who commented agree with me. This was a clinic on how to do mic work appropriately. Piper was flawless. Piper was classic, vintage Roddy Piper. He was able to deliver in a way that demonstrated what made him famous. And it shows how when an old school worker like that, who has those classic wrestling promo skills, gets in the ring with a more green performer like Wade Barrett, how it elevates Barrett's game. Barrett's mic work in that segment with Piper and with John Cena was the best it had ever been. And whether that's an impact of being in the ring with Piper, or if they worked it out beforehand and Piper offered them some advice, it was clear that Piper's influence really elevated that segment. What did you think of the show? And what do you think of current events in the world of professional wrestling overall? We want to hear from you. Please leave your comments here on the YouTube screen. You can also find us online at WrestlingNewsSource.com, on Twitter at WrestlingNewsHQ, and on Facebook at Wrestling News. Let's hear your comments. We like hearing from you. Speaking of old school, there were some reports from some fairly reputable sources in the internet wrestling community this week that on the heels of the WWE's Old School special, there is talks of reviving WCW Monday Nitro for either a one-off show or a continuing show. I think a lot of this talk is based on the WWE holding WrestleMania in Atlanta this year, which was WCW's stomping grounds. Now, that being the case, that might be sort of the snowball effect starter for this particular rumor or report. The fact that the WWE's putting WrestleMania on in Atlanta. Atlanta's the home of WCW. Hey, what if Nitro comes back, especially in the light of the Old School special? In this reporter's opinion, that cannot work. I don't see it happening, and if it does happen, it's going to be a big mess and a Shockmaster level joke, if you pardon the expression. Why? Well, the WWE spent a lot of time burying the WCW, especially during the heyday of the Monday Night Wars. And as we know, Vince had a habit of raiding talent from the old NWA and post that WCW, and then burying them on TV. This happened a lot. In fact, Nikita Koloff dodged that bullet back in the mid '80s, where Vince tried to win him away from NWA/WCW and was promised a high-level program, I believe with Jake the Snake Roberts. And the truth be told, as came out later, that was never going to happen, and Vince was going to bury him. And at the time, Nikita was one of WCW's biggest stars. So there's the history that the WWE has with WCW. Beyond that, there are a lot of names that were associated with WCW, high-profile names, who are now dead. And I don't need to name names here, but we all know the big one that I'm thinking of. And there are even some mid-card talent that just aren't around anymore that are so defined with the WCW brand that to try to bring them back, or to try to bring back WCW without them, really wouldn't make much sense. And beyond that, the two big angles that everybody thinks of, or that professional wrestling fans think of when they hear WCW, are the NWO and the Horsemen. You can't bring back either one of the classic versions of either one of those stables slash angles. You can't bring back the Horsemen because Flair's with TNA, and a number of those folks are passed away as well. Can't bring back the NWO in the classic format because Hogan's with TNA. Now, of course, we could reboot those angles and those stables with new wrestlers. In fact, you can bring back a Four Horsemen and have them managed by Arn Anderson, who's currently under contract with the WWE regardless. But again, I think it's going to leave a lot to be desired. And if this does become a recurring show, what do you do with those guys for the weeks that the show isn't running? Suppose they decided to do Nitro once a month. Well, what do you do with those guys the other 3 weeks out of the year? Can Nitro replace SmackDown as a separately branded show? Well, that's what I thought they should do from the very beginning with the Invasion angle, and keep two brands running literally as separate brands in order to maintain at least an illusion of competition. Right now, I think what you're seeing with the product becoming a little predictable and a little sad looking, really, is the fact that they really have no competition. The TNA is continuing to put on the same mediocre product week in and week out, and apart from some high-profile talent signings like Jeff Hardy and Mickie James, TNA really seems to be spinning their wheels and isn't doing a lot to really compete with the WWE. So can a rebooted Nitro bring some credibility back to WWE and be a fun angle? I don't think so. The WWE old school show was cool. And hey, let's make every WWE Raw before Survivor Series be the WWE old school show if that's what we want to do. But beyond that, let's not make it a recurring theme. It's going to basically remind people of what they're missing, and in some cases what they didn't get to see in the late 90s during the peak of WCW's popularity. And let's just let's stick with what we've got and come up with some other ways to increase the profile and increase the competition between both the WWE's internal brands, Raw and SmackDown, and the WWE and TNA. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think WCW Monday Nitro can make a comeback? If not, what are some other ways that the WWE can improve competition, both between the brands and with the other organizations? Leave your thoughts here on the YouTube screen or contact us through our other means. We'd like to hear your thoughts on a return of WCW or a return of competition on Monday nights in pro wrestling. My final thoughts this week are on the Indies. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm interested in including some segments in this videocast on the independent wrestling promotions. My reports in the past few weeks have been very WWE and TNA heavy, and I'd like to include some reports on the independent promotions out there, especially after last week's Viewer's Choice comments. Specifically requested some reports on independent promotions. So I went out this week and did some YouTube searching and did some internet searching and looked around for some good examples of independent wrestling organizations and some sample cards and sample matches. And I got to tell you, I don't get it. I was very, very unimpressed, and I really don't see the appeal. Many of these organizations seem just to be made up of really, really big people who are trying to hurt each other with things like fluorescent lighting tubes and barbed wire and poorly put together rings and a lot of fire for the sake of fire, and that's just not pro wrestling to me. The rest of them, I don't see the Daniel Bryan in any of these organizations that I've looked for or looked at. I'm not seeing any breakout stars. I'm not seeing any big guys who could be stepping up to the majors, so to speak. If we, operate under the assumption that that's the goal, that you get involved with the independent wrestling scene in the hope of being called up by either WWE or TNA or another organization that may go national like ROH is trying to do. The best program that I did see, I will say that, is Ring of Honor. It had the most professional production value and the most professional performers in the ring. But still, I didn't see the level of talent that I wanted to see based on everybody's desire to hear more about it on a show like this. What am I missing? Clue me in. Take me to school. Call me out on it because I don't get it. So hopefully somebody out there who watches this will make a comment and let me know where I can look and where I can find the good independent wrestling that isn't made up of just giant guys beating the hell out of each other. That's not wrestling. Once again, please leave your comments here on the YouTube screen. Find us on the internet at WrestlingNewsSource.com, on Twitter at WrestlingNewsHQ, or on Facebook at Wrestling News. We want to hear from you. Once again, this is The Wrestling Source, the exclusive YouTube show of WrestlingNewsSource.com. My name's David. See you next week.